All right, guys, I got another very talented producer with me today. His name is Adam Heyman, and Adam has a really interesting backstory about how he got involved with the music industry. But he's also recently stumbled into the sync licensing business as well. And he let me know that he's been watching my channel for about a year now. And he had a lot of questions about getting started with it and how to navigate this whole industry. So he sent me this really cool video just introducing himself and, kind of a little bit of his story. I just thought it was such an interesting story that he had. And I love hearing your guys' real life stories about how you got involved in this business. So that's why I wanted to bring Adam on. And then maybe we can answer some of his questions and you guys can benefit as well from watching this interview. So Adam, thanks so much for joining me, man. How you doing
Yeah,
today?
man, I'm super excited to be here, man. Love your channel. But yeah, I kind of want to aim this at the people who have plenty of talent and they're they're needing the drive and they need the motivation to put in the work. Because like you talk about a lot, uh, you know, oh, this could be a saturated industry, but it's like how many people are patient enough, willing to put in that time and effort to really make this like a lasting career, a full-time thing. And so, I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised in a musical family. And so, I mean, I was kind of cut out for this, but just because you can do it doesn't mean you're going to have the drive and push through. So, yeah, a lot of my experiences come down to stepping up in that sense where it's like, okay, you've stood out with your talent, but are you going to show up 100%? Are you going to stand out in that sense? And so yeah, I mean, how do you want to jump into this?
Well, let me tell me, I love what you're starting there, and it's absolutely true that just because you got the talent and the drive doesn't mean you have the persistence to
Yeah,
keep going with this. Why don't you walk me through? You were kind of telling me some of your stories about how you first got into the studios in
right.
LA, I think you were in,
Yeah.
and kind of some of the producers you've been working with, and just some of the credits you've had.
Cool. Yeah. So I moved down to LA right after high school. I kind of followed my brother. He does music too, like I said, musical family. Um, Ended up moving in with someone in the recording program. I was going to school for music, Musicians Institute. I was doing guitar and ended up falling more into producing. I'd been making stuff for all throughout high school, but then I was like, I really want to get in studios and record. Like I found out I loved performing and I got into touring and I did all that, played in bands, but there was some magic in the studio that isn't anywhere else. And so he ended up getting an internship about a year after we got out of school. And it was with the MIDI Mafia, and they are known for working with Justin Bieber, Frank. They discovered Frank Ocean, John Legend, just huge names. And so I was watching him. He would go intern, and he was doing the grunt work, sweeping, dusting, really barely getting to be a part of any sessions. And but he would talk about me, and he brought my name up enough throughout about a year, and eventually. They were like, yeah, let's see what he can do. And they brought me in, and I was working at a nightclub with my roommate too. I mean, we were working graveyard shifts, and it was brutal. I hated it. It was tough. And so I remember we were working. We had like a late afternoon, evening shift, and then we went straight to the studio at midnight. We had to mix and master a project. This was like, let's see what he can do, see if he can handle this all-nighter. We had to go from working that shift. We mixed and mastered an album, had to be done by 6 a.m. And I guess they were cool with it because they invited me back, and I ended up recording bass and guitar and a lot of stuff. I really got um, connected with their like in-house producer, and he was making beats a lot and giving them to their artists on the roster and stuff. And so he was constantly saying, hey, come play some guitar and bass on this. And that really opened a lot of doors. I was able to work with artists like Kehlani and Eric Bellinger, and just kind of cut my teeth and get to sit in on these sessions with these guys who taught me so much. And that's where I learned a lot about just kind of what you need to bring personality wise into the studio. knowing when to speak up, knowing when to shut up, knowing
Right.
when you are kind of out of your creativity comfort zone, and yeah, when you need to learn, just all those experiences. And that's kind of something I would like to recommend people, is put yourself in those positions where, as much as you can, you have role models, you have people that you can learn from on like a one-on-one, like personal basis. You can pick their brain, you're in the room or on a video chat with them. Try and meet people that can teach you stuff. You don't want to be the best person in the group, you know? So I like heavily encourage that from those experiences. But yeah, it turned into just an internship. I wasn't getting paid. I was going, and I didn't really know, like, a lot of these songs didn't end up anywhere, you know, so a good lot of these songs were just getting shelved. And so while it was a great experience, and I was like, man, these guys are um, such, they're doing big things. So I'm like just happy to be in the room. I'm happy to just kind of, even if I'm a fly on the wall, just observing, it was like a blessing to me. So of course I'm not going to ask for anything, but there was one night I remember I was going to go into the nightclub like 9 p.m. and I called the main guy at the studio. I had like tears in my eyes, just like trying to hold them back. And I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. Like, whatever you can do for me, like, I need this. It was like, and he was like, I got you. I got you. Like, we'll make something happen. Like, whatever, like, I got you. And I didn't know what that meant. And for a long time, nothing really did happen, but he had me, like, he really did, because that ended up turning into a library with like one of the top 5 libraries that are out there. I don't know if I can say library names.
It's
I don't
totally
know
up to you if you want to or not. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll skip that. But either way, I think that showing that you're desperate, that you're willing to do anything, stands out. Because that's another thing I saw when I was in that studio, and I worked with them for quite a few years, just kind of in the studio doing stuff. And I saw people come and go. My roommate ended up never really amounting. You know, he didn't get to go in to do sessions. He ended up leaving, you know, because after a while, you don't prove yourself. You don't do something to stand out. I saw interns come and go, and it's like they would all just be runners and be doing the grunt work. And it's like I watched them not stand up and try and show, you know, why they were worthy of going to the next level, you know. And yeah, I mean, so that's a big story there. And eventually they turned into what you were just talking about in one of your recent videos, a like a sub library, sub catalog in one of the more bigger, super popular libraries. And music that I had presented to them, hoping that they would develop this artist that I'd been working with. You know, we had a listening session and they loved it. And then like a year and a half later, they had transformed into this sub library, and they said, we're going to use that. Here's your contract, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sick, cool, let's do this. I don't really know what it means. I don't really know what's going to come out of it, but a contract, like, hell yeah, let's go. You know, with
Exactly,
these guys,
man.
these
That's
guys.
so cool. You're and my story are very similar in that we were both the guitar players going into these sessions and
Yeah.
lending our services. So that's really cool that you had. I felt, I mean, pretty much the same for me. You know, the very beginning days, it was so exciting just to be in these huge studios, see these huge artists, and like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can't even believe that I'm even here.
Right.
Even the sessions that I never even performed on, just being so excited on the edge of my seat, just listening and trying to understand how these producers are talking to each other and what kind of
Yes.
notes they're giving each other. So there's just so much stuff you can learn when you're there. And I also felt that same frustration too, you know, being there after so many days, you know, the nighttime where you're staying to the studio till 4 a.m.
Right.
and there's not much going on. You're certainly not getting paid. You know, at some point it starts to wear on you because you're like,
Yeah.
I need to make this a living. I need to actually
Yeah.
do something, and also feel not even so much for the money, but like I want to feel valued, that when I'm showing up here, I'm acknowledged. Like,
Yeah.
I'm contributing something useful here. I'm not just like a fly on the wall forever. In the beginning,
Right.
that's great, but at some point, you want to kind of, like you said, step into the spotlight, prove
Yeah.
yourself.
But
So it
that
gets a
sets
little
you
bit.
apart.
It gets a little bit frustrating after a while. So I have definitely the same with you. And that feeling when you got that first contract, same feeling I had. I got the
Yeah.
first contract, got a sync fee, or a consideration fee, and was like, whoa. Like, and even the library owner that I partnered with, this was back in the days when CDs were still a thing. He
Right.
actually put the albums out on CDs, and he gave me a copy of it and said, here's your album. This is basically the first album. And it was like literally my first album that I had ever released, actually
Right.
had out there in the world. So even though it was a production music TV film library album, to me, it was like, this is my
Yeah.
first album, you know? So that felt like a huge win for me. And also to
Huge.
have it, I still have it, I think, in my closet somewhere, but I still do
Right.
have that one.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, man, that you basically got into this world and you really just kept on pushing, and
Right.
you also weren't shy to just ask for help. So that's a really big
Yeah.
thing that,
Dude, you have to ask for help. You have to use the tools that you have around you, and that's your associates, and that's look at what's been placed in front of you and don't be afraid to use it, or just play around with the idea of picking people's brains and ask, how did you, dude, everyone who's like reached the top, they were picking everyone's brain. How did you do this? How did you get there? How did you figure this out? They learn from asking and talking to people. Like, this is the only way. You have to do that. You can't be afraid. And I want to say too, like what you were saying earlier about, staying at the studio until like 4 a.m. and stuff. Man, I tell people all the time, the only reason I feel like I'm where I'm at is because I kept going when most people, 99% of people would have given up. Those people who, just like my roommate, love him to death, still a great friend. But, some people just aren't cut out for this kind of thing. And it's like, man, the people who can't do that, and they're going to say eventually, man, I'm staying here till 4 a.m. all the fucking time. And it's like, sorry, you might have to bleep that out.
it's all right.
Staying here all the time and they're still not paying me. Like, how long am I gonna do this? And then they bail out. And it's like, no, I was gonna do it and tell them I'm gonna do it as long as you need me. Like, I'm here. I'm here no matter what. And that's the thing that sets you apart. I remember I was watching this video recently of Justin Bieber's engineer, and he, gets works like crazy. And it's like, there are so many people in line ready to take that position that when you get a text on Sunday when you're barbecuing with your family, this is his story, saying studio question mark. And he's like, man, how soon? And he's like, 15 minutes. You got to put down the barbecue and go to the studio now. Like, because there are people willing to take your spot. So like the sacrifices that you make, you decide how far you want to go, but the people who are on that level of success are making massive sacrifices and pushing themselves like no one else.
That's exactly it. And that is a big sacrifice there. And
Yeah.
exactly, I'm glad that you use that example because it's absolutely going to cut into your family life. It's going to cut
Yeah.
into your relationships, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. It's going to cut into anything you have that's important for yourself.
Yes.
So it's like you said, it's got to be the thing that you're like, yeah, but I need this. Like, this is the thing that I really want. This is the
You
thing that
gotta
I
be
really,
so hungry. You gotta,
yeah,
you gotta
like you're
need
willing
it.
to go beyond, what most people are going to. And I'm not going to say for anybody you should or should not do that. That's obviously one of those things. I think Adam's also saying that too, that you got to be very sober about that, be
Yeah.
very aware of that. This might not be the right path for you if that's not
Exactly.
enough, if that's not what you want to do, if you don't want to give
That's
up
it.
a large chunk of your either social life or your other hobbies, enjoyments, most of your sleep probably.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do that, maybe not so much. The good news though is with sync licensing, yes, there will be occasionally a time when you'll get like maybe an email from a library that you're working with, hey, we need something last minute because there's this opportunity, and those opportunities do happen. But the great news, the really, really great news, is that with sync licensing, you can do most of the work, if not all of the work, right from your home. So
Yeah.
there's a really cool way that you can basically get into a schedule so that you're actually creating music. You can actually craft your whole life so that you still can have a family life. You can still have the
Totally.
barbecue. You can still do those things for the most part. Of course, there
Yeah.
may be some exceptions here and there where you might need to push things out of the way or move things around. But for the vast majority of my 12 years in this career, I've been able to maintain family relationships, friendships,
Yeah.
do all the things that I've wanted to do. Once in a while, I wanted to hang out with somebody for longer than I can and realize, you know what, I've got a deadline. even if it's not something that I have to get back to fix, it's just in my head. It's just there.
Yeah.
Like, I know I need to make this track, and I'm excited about this track. So it's hard for me to sometimes be present with my family members and friends.
Yeah.
So that's a sacrifice, though, too, that you have to also, and that's an art. You're like trying to get better at that. So you're like, you know what? I'll have 2 days to work on that track, a couple days. For now, I'm going to be present with my friends and family.
Yeah,
so that's,
dude, set a schedule, and you will be way more organized and on track, and you'll be less stressed out when you can say, okay, I've set aside this block, for family time, and I've set aside this block for music time. Then you're not stressing over things overlapping. You've got it squared away, and I highly recommend just doing everything you can to stay as organized as possible with your time. And I know you've talked about that a lot, and couldn't agree more, man. Stay healthy in your mindset, where you're disciplined and you've got your stuff together. Like, that is going to affect your work tremendously.
Absolutely, man. So let's go ahead and dive in. Do you have some questions about sync licensing? Anything to do with your library? Anything I can help you out with before we end this one?
Yeah, let's just dig into a little bit about that, because I want to say that, like, I didn't know. I feel like not necessarily like direct questions, but I can go in to a topic and we can just like dig into that, and you can elaborate and make some things clear. Because what I didn't understand, so I joined. So like I said, that first library fell into my lap. I spent like the last 4 years doing that exclusively, and then came across another guy and joined his library just kind of also by chance. So like this, but I was going to say too, man, I did the touring, and I just quit last November. And you want to talk about like family time. This is a dream job in the music world, because you get to be home. You can work from your living room or the studio bedroom, whatever you have set up, like, and you can really be there and be present a lot. And so it is a blessing. I did the touring thing, and it was a lot worse, when it comes to that. But yeah, going back to the second library, I get this contract to sign over an album, and I was just, for the first time, like really unsure of it, like, what the heck is this a good contract? What am I getting myself into? Like, the first stuff, I know it's been going well, but then I'm also questioning, like, man, should I be getting paid more for this? And so I reached out to you actually, and like asked about, I sent an email with like some screenshots asking about, like, is this normal to be getting this much for this kind of thing? Because you just kind of made it clear that like everything fluctuates, like it just, and maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more, just like.
Yeah. First thing I'll definitely want to say, though, is that I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a manager. So I get these emails all the time, and I always have to tell people I cannot give you like specific recommendations, and I certainly can't look over contracts for people. But I do have, what I'll do is, Adam, I'll email you this, and everybody that's watching, I do have a link below to a YouTube video that I did, which was about like what's a sort of standard contract.
Right.
I would say that everything is negotiable. There are no sort of standard rates for like consideration fees, that kind of thing. I do think, though, the most important thing for you to always make sure is that you're keeping 100% of your writer share, unless you're co-writing with somebody else. I know that a couple of libraries out there, I've been made aware of them, they will actually send out contracts to writers saying somebody else is taking 50% of your writer share, and it's like, well, who's that guy, and why is he taking half of my income? So be guarded on those kind of things. I don't recommend 100%. Those kind of contracts, because that is going to be your primary bread and butter, is those royalties. Most libraries are going to keep 100% of their publishing.
Right.
So you have to just be accepting of that. Sometimes they'll give you a piece of it, but just expect that most libraries are going to say, we keep publishing, you keep writers. That's the 50-50 split, which is like fair.
Thanks to your videos, I understood this contract is totally normal, totally fair, a totally standard sync licensing type of contract. And so I felt comfortable to move on and sign on some more albums with them. But I was talking about, I sent some screenshots more about like ASCAP reports. I saw what I was earning for a show or whatever, and the fluctuation of a network or a show, and maybe you can just remind people that 30 seconds on one show can pay a whole lot different than 30 seconds on another show on a different network.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure. I've had one placement that was 9 seconds on, I think it was on Al Jazeera, and that was $1,700.
Right.
I've also had placements that were 2 minutes long that got me 14 cents.
Exactly.
Cents. So there's so many factors with that, and we won't get into all the factors that determine all those different ones, but
Yeah.
every different network, every different time of day, how your track is placed, how long the track
Exactly.
is placed, there's all these different factors that determine all that. So you just kind of like, I don't get too into the weeds in terms of like getting obsessed with how many each individual placement got, because you can get depressed, because you can look at your statement,
Sure.
it's like 1 penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies, it's a lot of small ones, and that
Yeah.
can really just bum you out if you're just looking at these individual ones. But that's why I've always gone with the sort of like, I want to build up a large quality catalog so that those
Yeah.
number of placements grow to the point where those pennies turn into dollars, then turn into hundreds of dollars, and
Dude,
turn into thousands of
exactly.
dollars. Yeah.
And that's I got stuck at some point right before I signed with the second library, where I was clueless about this industry and like how to push forward more, because it's like, okay, I've been doing this 3 years with this library, which is a great library and huge, getting massive stuff from Super Bowl commercials to The View and Better Call Saul and all that, like amazing stuff. Like I couldn't be more stoked on the placements, but I was like, your checks, I want to push harder. I want to do more. And then coming to your channel, that's when I started really searching for information and answers, and I found your channel and watched it religiously. And I realized it's a numbers game. Build your catalog and reach out to more than one library. And maybe you can chime in a little bit about, because I've had experience with only these 2 libraries, and they're very big libraries. So I'd like to hear about like boutique libraries, smaller libraries, comparisons. I've only had limited experience, so maybe that's a question that you can.
Oh, absolutely. And I do have I don't know if you watched the tutorial I actually have specifically on that. It's basically working with large corporate catalogs, libraries versus a small boutique one. So I'll link that below and I'll send it to you.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a full, I think, 45-minute presentation on
Nice.
exactly what the differences are between. The biggest difference, the most obvious one, is that when you go with a larger library, the big pros are that Super Bowl ads, big clients, right? But a lot more music, right? A lot more composers. So you become kind of a smaller fish in a bigger pond. So even though you're working with the big dogs, you're just one person in a big sea of tracks and catalogs.
Totally.
Now, when you go with a smaller boutique, they still can have really big clients, right? Not all of them are going to have huge clients, but some of them, they usually find a little niche for themselves. They're not going to be like a big library that serves all these different sides of the entertainment industry. Usually boutique libraries will say, we do reality shows well, or we do sports things, right? And then most of the time you'll find with a boutique library is that you become one out of maybe 10 or 20 composers that are actively submitting to them, rather than maybe 100 or 200 with these bigger companies, right? So you can kind of carve out a little bit more of a niche for yourself. And yes, I do recommend that you at least have 2 libraries that you're consistently working with, because now that way you can A/B compare who's getting you the work, who's getting you the royalties, who's getting you the sync fees, all that kind of stuff. And also you can see who's responding to me more, because it takes a long time, as it takes a long time to get those royalties. But what you can see in the beginning, in the first couple of months, is when I send an email to library A, does it take them a day or a week or a month to get back to me? And how about library B? Who's more responsive? And I always find, in my experience, the library that's more responsive, that's willing to talk to you, get on the phone with you, email you, text you, whatever it is, they're usually the ones that are going to do the best for you, because they are just saying, we acknowledge you. We know that you exist, Adam. We appreciate you. We appreciate your music.
Yeah.
And if you have questions or comments or concerns, or you want to be a part of what we're doing, we're going to invite you in, and we're going to keep you a part of the conversation. That's usually a sign that when there's a gig coming in, you're going to be included on that, right?
Totally.
If you're getting ignored, and you're kind of getting this like, well, it takes them a week to get back to me, or a month or something like that. I've heard one of my students recently said it's been like 6 months since their library's been able to reach back to them. So it's like, you're not getting included on anything if they're ghosting you like that.
I agree. And I think it works both ways, where it's like, me as a composer with the 2 libraries I'm working with, it's so easy to communicate with them. And we talk all the time with our connections. And if that wasn't happening, I would ditch them and search for another library. It goes both ways. And
absolutely,
I urge people to do that. If you are struggling, go find another library. And also, I just wanted, before we wrap it up, I wanted to give people a little bit of motivation about, if you're working personally, that first library I was working with, it's all full songs, as in vocalists are required for a lot of it too. I'm not a vocalist. What did I do to keep putting my songs in the catalog when I didn't have enough people hopping on vocals? I was reaching out I was looking at the releases and seeing vocalists that were already part of the catalog. I'd find their Instagram, I'd message them and say, "Hey, I saw you're part of this sub catalog too. Let's work together." It's just so
Smart,
I could
man.
keep getting as much as you can in there. Figure out a way to get more in there. So if you got a collab, find the people that are already in there and connect with them.
Absolutely, man. Super, super smart. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your thoughts
Thanks
today,
for
man.
having me, man.
Of course, of course. Maybe we'll do this another time and we'll
Totally.
chat a little bit more. And I do want to add one more thing before we go is that he's absolutely right. That's a great idea, is to maybe even reach out to other vocalists or even other producers under
Yes.
the catalog that you're submitting to. But we also in Sync Academy just released a 5-part series about how to find vocalists and how to basically start contracting with them, working with them in terms of getting the stems, getting the deliverables, mixing them.
Yes.
So if you guys are in Sync Academy, definitely check those out. We just released those actually a couple weeks ago. So it's absolutely
Super
true.
useful. Super useful.
Yeah, vocalists can really make or break some contracts for you in this business. So I do recommend you, if you want to, reach out to them and start working with them, or yourself. Obviously, you can sing. It's definitely going to add value to your tracks. Not every library needs it, but if your library is saying, yeah, you know what, vocals are really what we need, or it's just a nice benefit to have those for some of these songs or albums that we're going to release, jump on that and definitely check out those tutorials or use Adam's suggestion there. All that stuff can really help you out. So thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate you joining us today, man.
Thanks, you too, man. I'll talk to you soon.